Imagine you're walking into a medical procedure room, and the tension in the air is it's heavy,
Oh, absolutely. It's a very specific kind of energy.
Right. You look around, and every single person in the room, the doctor, the nurse, the technician, they're all strapping on heavy industrial-grade eye protection.
Which is not your standard hospital vibe.
Not at all. And it doesn't stop there. They turn to you, the patient, and completely cover your face with this protective shield.
Wow.
Yeah. It feels less like a standard checkup and more like the prep for a hazardous materials cleanup.
Yeah, hazmat situation.
Exactly. And then the doctor reaches for the primary tool they're going to use to save your life today, which is, wait for it, a tube of super glue.
It paints quite a picture, doesn't it?
It really does.
It sounds like a scene pulled straight from some intense medical thriller. But this is a very real, incredibly serious protocol for a life or death situation.
It is entirely real. So welcome to this deep dive. Today we are exploring this fascinating YouTube video by Dr. Gaudamakula S. Raju.
Right, the one on cyanoacrylate glue.
Yeah, it's titled HCC 197529 Cyanoacrylate Glue for Gastric Varices. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the intense, high-stakes world of using this commercial-style glue to treat dangerous internal bleeding.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. So whether you're a medical professional catching up on clinical techniques or you're just, an insanely curious learner, we're going to give you a complete behind-the-scenes picture of this absolutely extraordinary procedure.
Yeah, and to really grasp what's happening here, we need to set a baseline first.
Okay, let's do it.
We need to understand the fundamental problem the medical team is trying to solve with cyanoacrylate glue, which, for anyone listening, is the actual chemical name for what we all keep in our junk drawers as superglue.
Right, the stuff that glues your fingers together.
Exactly the same stuff. So they're using this adhesive to manage something called gastric varices, specifically isolated fundic varices located in the stomach.
Okay, let's pause right there because isolated fundic varices sounds like a very dense medical textbook term.
Fair enough.
If we were looking inside a patient's stomach right now, what does that actually look like? And I guess, why are they so dangerous?
Sure. So if you visualize the anatomy of your own stomach, the fundus is the upper part. It's the section that sort of bulges upward.
Okay, got it.
Now imagine the veins in that specific area becoming severely swollen, twisted, and engorged with blood.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and they're under really high pressure. They look a bit like extreme varicose veins, but they're bulging out from the internal lining of the stomach wall.
Inside the stomach.
Right. And because they're so swollen, the tissue covering them gets stretched incredibly thin, so they are highly vulnerable.
Like a balloon about to pop.
Exactly like that. If one of those vessels ruptures, the patient experiences massive catastrophic internal bleeding.
Wow.
So the team has to seal them up from the inside while the blood is still actively flowing.
That sounds terrifying. Which I guess brings us to the actual procedure. And looking at the source material, to understand how superglue is used inside a living, breathing organ, we first have to look at the prep.
Yes, the hazmat protocol.
Right, because the preparation is essentially a hazmat protocol. Which makes me wonder, if the doctor is working through a long tube deep inside the patient's stomach, why is the patient's face covered?
It's a great question.
And why is everyone wearing industrial goggles? Like, what's the risk there?
The underlying thread is the behavior of the chemical itself. Because before the glue ever gets into the patient's stomach, it has to be handled.
Right, like physically prepped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's drawn into syringes, manipulated on a prep table by the staff.
Yeah.
And the sheer respect the team must have for cyanoacrylate is paramount.
Because if it splashes...
The splash during that prep phase is a disastrous event.
I mean, it's super glue in an eye. That sounds agonizing.
It is much worse than just an irritant, unfortunately. Cyanoacrylate polymerizes.
Meaning it hardens.
Right. It hardens into a solid plastic-like state the moment it comes into contact with moisture. And as we know, the human eye is constantly coated in moisture.
Oh, God. So it just instantly...
It instantly cures.
Yeah.
If a single drop of that glue hits an open eye, whether it's the nurses or the patients, it bonds to the cornea.
That is awful. What do they even do if that happens?
If that happens, The protocol requires an immediate, super aggressive response.
Yeah.
They have to flood the eye with copious amounts of water.
Just flush it completely.
Yeah, and apply specific methylcellulose eye drops to try and lubricate and protect the surface.
Yeah.
And they instantly call in an ophthalmologist.
Right then and there.
Right then and there.
Yeah.
You are suddenly in a literal race against the clock to save that person's vision.
Okay, well, that completely explains the heavy face shields. Nobody wants to risk that.
Definitely not.
But the protection, it extends beyond just the humans in the room, right? The video goes into detail about protecting the medical equipment itself.
Yes, the endoscopes.
Right. Endoscopes are incredibly expensive. Delicate pieces of machinery packed with, like, fiber optics. And the source notes that the team has to coat the scope and the internal working channel of the scope with specialized oil or silicone.
That's right.
I read that and immediately thought of, prepping a priceless sports car engine. Are they just trying to lubricate the tube so the glue slides down faster?
It's actually a bit more chemically complex than just lubrication.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you aren't just reducing friction. You're trying to outsmart a volatile chemical reaction. You're basically creating a chemical dead zone.
A dead zone? How does that work?
Well, cyanoacrylate needs certain conditions to bond to a surface. By thoroughly coating the inside of that working channel with silicone oil, they create a non-stick barrier.
Ah, I see.
So if there's an accidental spillage, or if the glue backs up into the channel, that layer of oil prevents the adhesive from finding any microscopic grip.
It just slides right off.
Exactly. It stops the glue from permanently cementing the inside of a multi-thousand-dollar medical instrument into a solid, useless rod.
That makes total sense. But, so, if this glue is that aggressive and polymerizes that incredibly fast, how on earth do they get it down a 3-foot plastic tube and into a patient's vein without the whole thing turning into a solid block of plastic halfway down?
I mean, that is the ultimate logistical challenge of this whole procedure.
It sounds impossible.
Because the glue sets almost instantly, there is zero room for hesitation. The medical team cannot just casually push it through the tube.
Right.
The execution has to be perfectly synchronized, like a high-performance pit crew. The technician working the back table has to have everything meticulously prepped before the endoscopist even asks for it.
Yeah, the source outlines this whole arsenal of syringes. Like, they have at least 10 syringes ready, each drawn up with exactly 0.5 milliliters of glue.
Very precise.
Half a milliliter. I mean, that is barely a drop. Why such a tiny specific amount?
Well, that tiny volume is a critical safety parameter, which I will explore in a moment when we talk about the anatomy of the veins. But alongside those 10 tiny syringes of glue, the assistant has another 10 syringes.
Oh, right, the water ones.
Yep, each filled with exactly 3 milliliters of distilled water.
Let me jump in there, actually, because that detail stood out to me. Why distilled water? Why not normal saline, which is what they seem to use for everything else in a hospital?
It all comes back to the chemistry of the polymerization we just talked about. Normal saline contains salt, right?
Yeah.
Sodium chloride.
Right?
And those ions can actually trigger the cyanoacrylate to start curing prematurely.
Oh, wow. So the saline itself would ruin it.
Exactly. Distilled water is stripped of those minerals. It's completely inert. So it won't trigger the glue to harden while it's still inside the delivery catheter.
That makes perfect sense. So you have these 2 sets of syringes lined up, and the actual sequence of how they use them is fascinating.
There's a very strict choreography.
Yeah. First, they prime the injection catheter with the distilled water. Then the endoscopist gives the command, literally calling out, "Get the glue."
And the assistant moves fast.
Right. The assistant attaches that tiny 0.5 milliliter glue syringe, and then they push the glue in, but they only push it partly into the catheter. They don't push it all the way through to the patient yet.
The speed and precision right there are vital. Immediately after pushing that 0.5 milliliters of glue into the top of the tube, the assistant detaches the empty glue syringe, quickly attaches the distilled water syringe, and rapidly flushes the line with 1 to 3 milliliters of that water.
Wait, so if you're putting a larger volume of water right behind that tiny packet of glue, is the water essentially acting like a ramrod?
Like a ramrod, exactly.
Like forcefully firing that tiny bullet of glue out of the catheter and into the varix before it has a chance to harden.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. In fluid dynamics, they're using the inert water to physically drive the adhesive payload across the distance of the scope as rapidly as possible.
That's so smart.
And the course mentions they sometimes use the full 3 milliliters of water specifically to help disperse the glue wider once it enters a larger varix.
Oh, to kind of spread it out inside the vein?
Right. And throughout this entire rapid-fire process, The communication is strictly regulated. The assistant must continually narrate their physical actions out loud.
Like calling out the steps.
Yes, they're calling out 0.5 milliliter glue in, followed by 1 milliliter distilled water injected, 2 milliliter injected, keeping everyone in sync.
It's exactly like a co-pilot calling out altitudes during a difficult landing.
That's a great analogy.
The doctor staring down the scope knows exactly where the glue is at any given millisecond. But here's the part where my brain genuinely gets stuck.
Okay, what is it?
You're injecting an industrial-grade, instant-setting adhesive through a metal needle directly into a human vein filled with blood.
Yes.
If the moisture in the blood causes it to harden the second it makes contact, how does the metal needle not get permanently glued to the inside of the patient's stomach wall?
It's wild to think about. The solution to that relies entirely on the physical technique of the endoscopist.
No.
They don't just hold the needle still while the fluid is flowing.
Yeah.
As the injection is actively happening, the doctor performs what is literally referred to as a continuous jiggly motion.
A jiggly motion.
Yeah, moving the needle slightly in and out of the varix.
I love that one of the most highly advanced, high-stakes medical procedures relies on a foundational technique called jiggling.
I know, it sounds incredibly informal, but it is pure physics in action. As the glue hits the blood, it's actively hardening into a solid plastic shell, right?
Right.
By constantly moving the needle back and forth inside that space, the doctor is constantly breaking the microscopic mechanical bonds before they can fully lock onto the metal of the needle.
Ah, so it never gets a chance to grab hold.
Exactly. That constant agitation prevents the rapid-setting polymer from gripping the instrument, allowing them to withdraw the needle safely the moment the glue is deposited.
Okay, so they've mastered the chemistry, they have the speed down perfectly, they're jiggling the needle to keep it free.
Right. All the mechanics.
But even with all of those mechanics working flawlessly, where they actually choose to inject that glue is a matter of life and death.
It really is. Geography is everything here.
Because injecting in the wrong spot on that swollen vein can cause the exact catastrophic bleed they're trying to prevent.
To understand the strategy here, you have to visualize the topography of the varix. Remember, a large fundic varix is not a flat line on a stomach wall.
It's bulging out.
Right, it bulges out significantly. The source material describes its shape inside the stomach as a mound or a prominent hill.
A hill of blood, essentially. And if I'm looking at a bulging, tense hill of blood, my natural instinct, and probably the instinct of a lot of doctors first looking through that scope, would be to attack the most prominent bulging part of the problem.
Right, the most obvious spot.
You'd want to inject the glue right at the very top of the hill where it looks the biggest.
And that instinct is incredibly dangerous.
Really?
Yeah. The video heavily stresses that injecting right at the top, or the apex of that mound, is the primary cause of severe bleeding complications.
Why is that?
The tissue at the very top is under the absolute maximum amount of pressure. And because it's stretched so far, it is incredibly thin.
Oh, I see.
If you pierce the top with a needle, it can catastrophically rupture before the glue ever has a chance to polymerize and seal it.
So it's like trying to patch a water balloon that is already swelling and about to burst.
Exactly.
You would never take a needle and poke the very top where the rubber is stretched the thinnest and the pressure is highest. It would pop right in your face.
That analogy perfectly captures the physics of the danger. So, to safely seal the varix, the endoscopist has to completely flip their approach.
They go from the bottom.
Yes. The correct methodical technique is to start at the bottom of the hill. They locate the periphery of the varix, the outer edge where it meets the relatively stable, thicker wall of the stomach.
Okay.
They inject that first tiny 0.5 milliliter increment of glue right there at the base.
So they're reinforcing the foundation first.
Exactly right.
They're building a solid wall at the base and then slowly inching their way up, injecting step by step toward that dangerous peak.
By working from the bottom up, they are systematically shutting down the smaller feeder vessels and reducing the overall pressure inside that swollen vein before they ever have to touch the most vulnerable area at the top.
That is so strategic.
It is. And Dr. Raju in the video specifically credits the pioneer of this bottom-of-the-hill method, an article by Dr. Desai from India.
Oh, Dr. Desai.
Yeah. Dr. Desai successfully utilized this specific technique on roughly 2,000 to 3,000 patients without experiencing major bleeding or embolization issues.
Wow, 2,000 to 3,000.
Yeah. When you consider the life or death stakes of what we're discussing, that track record is phenomenal.
It really is. But, of course, human anatomy is incredibly complex, and this is medicine. Even with Dr. Desai's brilliant bottom-up technique, we have to talk about what happens when the anatomy itself works against you.
Right, the worst-case scenarios.
Well, because when you're dealing with instant superglue inside the human circulatory system, the absolute worst-case scenarios are truly extreme. Where does the glue go if it escapes the stomach?
This is the darkest shadow hanging over the entire procedure. The greatest fear the medical team has isn't just local bleeding in the stomach. It's a complication called pulmonary embolization.
Okay, if you are listening to this right now, visualize your own anatomy. Your stomach is in your abdomen and your lungs are up in your chest.
Right, they feel far apart.
They feel like they're in completely different anatomical zip codes. How on earth does stomach glue end up blocking a lung?
It comes down to a unique biological superhighway that exists in some of these patients. In some individuals, the gastric varices we're treating have a direct abnormal communication pathway called a large splenorenal shunt.
Okay, a shunt.
Yeah. This shunt connects the high-pressure veins in the stomach directly to the inferior vena cava.
And the inferior vena cava is the massive central river of a vein that carries blood straight back up into the right side of the heart.
Precisely. It goes from the stomach, straight into the vena cava, up into the heart, and the heart immediately pumps it directly into the pulmonary arteries of the lungs.
Whoa, wow.
This is why that strict 0.5 milliliter limit we discussed earlier is not a suggestion. It's a hard physiological rule.
Because if they use too much.
If a doctor injects a large volume of glue all at once, the sheer volume pushes it past the local varix and into that splenorenal shunt.
When it just gets swept away.
The massive blood flow catches that liquid glue, sweeps it up through the heart, and it shoots into the lungs before it is fully hardened.
That is terrifying.
Once it hits the narrow pulmonary arteries, it solidifies, creating a pulmonary embolism. It instantly blocks blood flow to the lungs, which is an immediate life-threatening emergency.
It makes you realize those tiny 0.5 milliliter syringes are the literal safety brakes stopping the glue from riding that superhighway.
Exactly. They are crucial.
But there's another contingency that the team has to be ready for, and honestly, this one blows my mind.
Oh, I know what you're going to ask about.
We talked about the jiggly motion used to keep the needle from getting glued to the patient's stomach wall. But what if the jiggle fails?
It happens.
What if the glue sets a fraction of a second too fast and the metal needle actually gets cemented into the vein?
Right.
Does the patient have to be rushed into open abdominal surgery? Do they use some kind of harsh chemical solvent to melt the superglue inside the stomach?
You would think it requires a massive, complex intervention. But the actual protocol here is surprisingly calm and almost entirely mechanical.
Really?
Yeah. If the needle gets completely stuck, the doctor must not panic, and they don't try to frantically carve it out. They simply give the plastic catheter a firm tug.
A tug. You just yank it.
You just yank it. The force snaps or disconnects the plastic catheter from the end of the scope, and the metal needle is intentionally left behind.
Left behind.
Permanently glued into the solid mass inside the patient's stomach wall.
I am in absolute awe of the human body right now because the source material explains what happens next, and it is almost unbelievable.
It's pretty amazing.
They leave the needle there, and over the next few days or weeks, as the body heals, it reacts to this foreign object.
Right, the body knows it shouldn't be there.
Granulation tissue forms behind it, and the solid mass of glue with the sharp metal needle completely encased safely inside it naturally extrudes.
It slowly pushes itself out.
Yes. It pushes itself completely out of the stomach wall, falls into the gastric lumen, safely travels through the miles of the human intestines, and the patient simply passes the glued needle in their stool.
It is a profound testament to the body's natural response mechanisms. By remaining calm, recognizing that the sharp edges are completely encapsulated by the smooth, hardened plastic of the glue, the medical team lets the gastrointestinal tract do the heavy lifting.
Just let the body do the work.
Exactly. A potentially catastrophic surgical complication becomes a harmless bodily function just a few days later.
It perfectly highlights the sheer versatility of this glue. And the source points out that cyanoacrylate isn't just a one-trick pony for bleeding stomach veins either.
No, not at all. The video broadens the scope by noting the work of the famous German endoscopist, Dr. Nibso-Hendra.
Oh yeah, what did he do?
He revolutionized the use of this adhesive in other highly critical areas. He successfully used cyanoacrylate glue injections to close pancreatic and biliary fistulas.
Fistulas are abnormal connections, right?
Right. They are dangerous, abnormal leaking connections between abdominal organs. He also used it to seal anastomotic leaks, which are leaks that occur at the delicate connection points after a surgical resection.
So they're essentially using it as a biological plumbing sealant for the pancreas and bile ducts.
Basically, yeah. It really demonstrates how a deep mechanical understanding of a material's properties,
Yeah.
like its rapid polymerization in the presence of moisture and its incredible sealing strength, can be adapted to solve some of the most difficult leaky problems deep inside the human abdomen.
So to bring this all together for everyone listening, we have taken an incredible journey today unpacking this YouTube video from Dr. Raju.
We really have covered a lot of ground.
We started with the intense hazmat level prep, the absolute necessity of eye protection to prevent corneal damage, and the chemical dead zone created by oiling the endoscopes.
And then we walked through the fluid dynamics of the rapid-fire injection protocol.
The pit crew.
Right. Those critical 0.5 milliliter payloads of glue driven by distilled water, all coordinated with that physics-defying jiggly motion to keep the needle free.
We climbed the topography of the varix using Dr. Desai's bottom-of-the-hill approach, systematically shutting down the pressure at the foundation before ever touching the dangerous peak.
Right.
And finally, we looked at the sheer life-or-death anatomy of the splenorenal shunt and the shockingly practical contingency of just letting the human digestive tract safely pass a glued needle.
For you listening, I hope this deep dive reveals something profound about the intense, deeply analytical nature of modern medical problem-solving. It isn't always about inventing a new billion-dollar machine. Sometimes it is about taking a commercial adhesive, something fundamentally similar to the superglue sitting in your drawer right now, and through sheer procedural discipline, a deep understanding of fluid dynamics and biological physics, turning it into a life-saving tool.
It really does make you look at the mundane objects around you differently, which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
If doctors can adapt a common household concept like superglue to safely seal high-pressure blood vessels and leaking fistulas deep inside the human body, what other ordinary, everyday materials sitting ignored in our garages or under our sinks might hold the key to the next great medical breakthrough? Keep digging deeper.